and I'm going to miss him for one. The topic today is speed cameras. We've been talking about it for a while, and I want to welcome Council Speaker Corey Johnson here today, and Amy Cohen, who is the founder for Families for Safe Streets, and my counsel, Alfonso David. Obviously, the Amy Cohen and the Families for Safe Streets have been working on this issue daily. They have done phenomenal work advising the public of this issue and the concerns. On a personal level, we just had a conversation, and I said I have such respect and admiration for what they've done personally to take a tragedy in one's life, and rather than getting bitter and getting negative, to turn that to a positive, to try to help others and save other lives. That speaks volumes about each and every person involved. And it takes a tremendous amount of strength and love and compassion. So God bless you for that. Not only have you been fighting the good fight, but you've been very effective at it. And we're going to make progress because of your advocacy. And I hope that gives you some peace and satisfaction that you've actually achieved and done good. And it's not an overstatement to say that because of your actions and the actions we're taking today, lives may actually be saved, so other people don't go through the pain and the grief that you did. And that's what this has been all about. On July 25th, the New York State Senate left without renewing the speed camera law. Speed cameras save lives. It is unequivocal. When you look at the data that has been produced since the speed cameras were put in place, before speed cameras, 18 children were killed per year. That went down to 8 children. That's 10 children's lives that were actually saved by the speed cameras. Overall, the number of accidents, fatalities in New York City, school zones decreased by 55% since the speed cameras were put in place on an annual basis, from 18 a year to 8. Total crashes were down 15% from 2,800 to 2,400. Injury crashes were down 17% from 2,100 to 1,800. So, speed cameras save lives, and the speed cameras have not been renewed. One of the powers a governor has is, in an emergency situation, the governor has what are called emergency powers. Emergency situations are normally things like fires, floods, hurricanes, terrorist attacks. But an emergency, by definition, is a situation that may cause the loss of human life. If we do not put the speed cameras back in an operational capacity, I think it is inarguable, but that there is a high probability that we will have the loss of human life. That is what all the evidence shows. It is also clear to me that we are in an emergency situation. Up until now, we held out the hope that the state legislature would come back and renew the law. It is clear as we sit here today, the state Senate is not coming back to renew the law. We are just several days from the Labor Day weekend. There have been many conversations. The Senate is not coming back into session to pass the law. That means the emergency is now imminent. Fact 2, school opens next week. once school opens, obviously you'll have more children, more pedestrians, more teachers. That is going to dramatically increase the potential for loss of life if the speed cameras are not operational. So that is further evidence that we are in an emergency situation. Third, the New York State Police, the New York City Department of Transportation has reviewed all the information on speed cameras, and they believe that speed cameras save lives. Fourth, New York City, the mayor, the council speaker, the council, all believe that speed cameras save lives. There's a public safety emergency if we do not reinstate the speed cameras. Based on that foregoing, I'm going to sign an executive order that does two things. It reinstates the state law and same fine structure, same provisions that the legislature has failed to reinstate for the 140 cameras. The executive order will become effective immediately upon signing, which will be today. Operationally, it will be effective September 4th, the day before school opens, just to make sure operationally there are no glitches and everything is working for the first day of school. Also, the day before school opens, you'll have increased activity in the building. You'll have teachers coming in, personnel coming in, etc. So operationally, it will go into effect on September 4th. It will reinstate the law. It will allow Department of Motor Vehicles to work with New York City. New York City will be passing a law that is a mirror of the state law, same fines, same penalties, etc. This is an aggressive legal action. I believe it is legally prudent and legally sustainable, but it is an aggressive legal action. But I believe we are also in extraordinary circumstances, and I'm not going to be a governor who sits by and because the state Senate is playing politics and refusing to come back, we jeopardize human life, especially the lives of children. I want to thank Council Speaker for his extraordinary cooperation in this. Went so far as coming back from vacation to do this. I told him earlier I would feel bad for him for coming back from vacation, but there are some of us who have not gone on vacation, so that reduces the amount of pain I feel for his returning early. But he and his team, Jason, have been really extraordinary in their creativity and their thoughtfulness on this topic. I want to thank Mayor de Blasio, who I've been working on, who I've spoken to a number of times on this issue, and he's going to do a message of necessity for the bill that the council speaker passes. That message of necessity will be further evidence of the emergency, and that is the emergency that I am responding to. So I want to thank the mayor for his cooperation. And as I said, this is an extraordinary action, but it's an extraordinary situation. This is not a substitute for the state legislature coming back and passing the law. We still need the Senate to act responsibly and come back and pass a permanent law, so we don't have to do this 30 days by 30 days interim situation. And they should have done it. I call on them to do it again. They are putting politics above public safety. It is that simple. There is no nuance, there is no gray. This is all politics. They don't want to come back to do it. By the way, they didn't want to do it since January. The bill was on their desk since January. It's not that they didn't do it in June. They didn't do it since January. And they're still refusing to do it now. And it is inexcusable. With that, let me turn it over to the council speaker and once again thank him and his team. Where is Jason? And especially Jason, who worked very, very hard on this, and I want to thank him for everything he did.
Thank you, Mr. Governor. I want to thank the Families for Safe Streets advocates and activists for their tireless organizing and really painstaking, emotional work around this, because this is extraordinarily difficult for families who have lost children and loved ones to traffic violence. And their hard work, along with transportation alternatives, I think really is what gotten us to this point, and telling their stories to the governor and to myself and the mayor and the state legislature, individual council members and individual state legislators. So I'm grateful that we are taking action today. We have spent the last 4 days talking a lot with the governor and his team and the mayor about how to craft a way to get the cameras turned back on before the start of school. I want to thank the governor for his leadership on this. I want to thank him for putting forth an executive order which is going to allow the State Department of Motor Vehicles to share information with the city once we pass a local law this upcoming week, and for him being creative and thoughtful with his counsel, Alfonso David, on figuring out a legal strategy on how we could move this forward in a responsible manner. I want to thank the mayor for agreeing to issue a message of necessity on the bill that we are going to vote on this Wednesday. And I really am grateful that we're going to get these cameras turned back on. But again, to echo what the governor said, this is not a substitute. This is not a replacement for the Republican State Senate coming back and actually not just renewing the law, but strengthening the law so that cameras can be on all hours of the day, so that there can be at additional schools throughout the city, and that we can protect more lives of folks. So the council is taking action through local law. We will vote on that bill this Wednesday. The governor is signing an executive order which facilitates our ability as a city to be able to do that, and the mayor is going to issue a message of necessity so that the bill doesn't have to age in the normal time frame, so that we can actually hear the bill and pass the bill this week. But again, I want to thank Amy Cohen, the founder of Families for Safe Streets. I want to thank Paul Steely White, who's not here right now, and I want to thank especially the governor for his creativity and hard work in getting us to this point. And I look forward to ensuring that this camera gets renewed and expanded and strengthened moving forward. And our fight will not stop after today. We will continue to bring this up to tell the state Senate to do their jobs. Thank you very much.
Well said, well said. One other point before we go to Amy Cohen. I applaud the council speaker, who's relatively new in his position, as you know. But all too often, government has taken a posture of, well, we tried to get it done, or we articulated what needs to be done, or I said I am in favor of that. Government has fallen into this malaise where process is enough, and moving the piece of paper from the inbox to the outbox is enough. It's a problem all across this country, and one of the reasons why people have lost faith, I think, in government. But that's not who this council speaker is. This is a get it done. It's about making progress. It's about helping people. And it's not about taking the bureaucratic step It's about showing the courage and the ingenuity and the creativity to actually get to a result. And that's what this was. And this was, I've worked on a lot of complicated issues. This one was a very complicated issue, and it required outside-the-box thinking. And the council speaker was there, and I want to thank him very much. And with that, Amy Cohen, who, as Corey said, Families for Safe Streets, God bless you. God bless your tenacity. God bless your effort, your energy, your love. And today, and the progress we make today is because of you. And I congratulate you on that. And with that, Amy Cohen.
Thank you. When your child dies, it is hard to be grateful. The world suddenly seems dark and very cruel. But today, there is a little light. We are so grateful to the governor and the speaker for finding a temporary solution to save lives, because we know all too well the high price for not acting. Every 38 hours, someone is killed in a traffic crash, and thousands suffer life-altering injuries every year. No one will know the names of the children and individuals whose lives we saved today. But we know there are now children who will get to graduate elementary school, middle school, high school, and beyond. Unlike Sammy and Allison, Asif, Giovanni, Leonora, Ariel, and so many more. And thousands of others whose bodies will not be crushed by multi-ton weapons like Devin and Hutch here today. Today, there is some light amidst our personal darkness. And we have found a way to be grateful. So thank you to the governor, to the speaker, to the mayor, to the administration, to the hundreds of organizations who joined with us in this fight, the unions, the hospitals, the PTA, the social service organizations, the schools, the individual New Yorkers. And thank you to my Families for Safe Streets family, who has kept me alive for the past 5 years. There is still a cloud, a dark cloud, hanging over the Senate. As the governor and speaker said, we still need them to come back and do the right thing, to renew and expand and improve the speed camera program. But for today, we are celebrating this life-saving step forward. Thank you.
Beautifully said. Beautifully said. Beautifully said. Why don't you come up now? Let's sign the executive order, and then we'll take questions. Corey, you want to come over here?
Come on, kiddos. Sit here.
Feeling right over here.
Okay, sweetie. Come sit here.
Congratulations, the order is signed.
Thank you for the honor of the governor. Thank you so much on behalf of my family.
There you go.
All right, guys.
Anybody want some? There.
Once you get a pen, let's go back to our seats.
Thank you.
explain, we may be getting too much into the weeds about exactly how this works, but does the council have to do this action this week and the mayor do the bill of necessity, or could you have just gone ahead and signed the executive order on your own? And also, where's the mayor?
Well, as I said, I want to thank the mayor. We've had numerous conversations on this topic. It's not for me to say, but I believe he's taking his son back to school today, which is then a dangerous precedent and gives all of us guilt now if we don't take our children back to school. But I believe that's what he's doing. But that's for him to say. He was very engaged, and we personally spent a lot of time figuring this out. This is an aggressive legal strategy. I am comfortable with it. Our lawyers are comfortable with it. We have legal opinions on it, but it is an aggressive legal strategy. And there are two prongs to it. The state, by emergency declaration, reinstates the state law that had the fines, the violations, and authorized DMV to implement the speed cameras, et cetera. So we implement the state law. The city will be passing what is in essence a mirror law to the state law, same fines, same violations, and the State Department of Motor Vehicles will be cooperating with the city because the city's law can't work without the state DMV. So you need the emergency declaration to reestablish the state law, to mobilize the Department of Motor Vehicle. The city is passing an identical law, so you'll have a state law and a city law, and the city needs Department of Motor Vehicles to cooperate with them to implement their law. The city's action, my action, is premised on the fact that I believe there is an emergency. Well, Governor, what evidence do you have for an emergency? School opens next week. The data says young people have a higher likelihood of death. The Senate legislature is not going to come back. The data, according to the state police, et cetera, demonstrates there's a real risk of life. And the actions of the local government also evidence an emergency. Council is voting on a law. The mayor is doing a message of necessity, saying there's an imminent risk. So I declare an emergency. I explain the factors why I believe there's an emergency. I reestablish the state law. It authorizes DMV. The city passes a law with the same violations as the state law, requiring DMV to cooperate with the city law to make it operational. And we'll go down both tracks simultaneously. And again, it's not a substitute for final passage of a state law that does this permanently, clearly, and as the council speaker said, expands the number of cameras. But as an emergency measure to put the cameras back on, it's the best we can do.
Governor,
Does that make sense to you?
Governor, is the reason this wasn't patched in July because over the summer you couldn't justify the emergency with less traffic around schools? Or was it because this scenario had not yet presented itself and you really didn't see a solution other than
It requires the condition precedent is an emergency. There was no emergency in July the way there's an emergency now. A hurricane may hit next Thursday. Governor, declare an emergency. I will declare an emergency if we get to Wednesday and the hurricane is still coming. We are at that point now. School opens next week. The Senate is not coming back. We're almost at the Labor Day weekend. They're not coming back. They've never said they're coming back. There's no hint that they're coming back. So we are now at that precipice where we have an emergency the day the school opens.
But was this always something at your fingertips in legal?
No, I always believed the Senate Republicans would come back and pass the bill. I never believed that they would be this irresponsible, this tone deaf, where they would actually jeopardize young lives to this extent. I never believed it. I always believed they would come back.
Governor, can you tell us for what period of time your executive order will be in effect? And if you could do this by executive order, why do you need the legislature to come back and do it?
As I said, this is an aggressive legal strategy. We need a permanent resolution, and that can only be done by the Senate coming back and passing a permanent law. An emergency declaration is only good for 30 days because the point is it's responsive to an emergency, and an emergency is 30 days. I can renew it at the end of 30 days, finding the conditions of an emergency still exist. So at the end of 30 days, if nothing has changed, I can find that an emergency continues to exist and reissue the order.
So do you anticipate having to re-establish this emergency order until January when the legislature is due to come back?
I expect them to come back. No, I expect them to come back between now and then and do their job. And by the way, there are other bills that they need to do also. But come back and pass the law and do your job.
Governor, can I ask you just about any concerns you would have here in terms of setting precedent by declaring an emergency? Could you do, or a future governor do something like this on any other issue, even a gun-related issue, say, guns are going to cause imminent death, therefore there's a state of emergency, the students are coming back to school.
Well,
I decree, declare whatever about guns.
look, I've declared a number of emergencies, floods, hurricanes, fire, etc. There are legal conditions for the governor's use of the emergency power. And those conditions can be legally challenged. So if you were overly aggressive in your use of the emergency power, you would be challenged and you would lose. The legislature is the main body that would be the first to protest because the legislation is their purview, right? I've spoken to Assembly Speaker Carl Heastie. He thinks this is an appropriate use of emergency power. I have not spoken to the Senate, but let the Senate say, I think it's an overuse of the governor's power, and I'm not going to come back and renew the law. I dare them.
Follow-up related questions. Why not call them back for a special session? You can force them back. You can't force them to vote. But you can't.
Because it's pointless. It's pointless. It's like saying to you, you have to write a story. No, I don't. You can call me and say that, and I'll take the phone call out of respect, but you don't have to write a story. They don't have to vote. They can just, when you call them back physically, and I've seen this too many times, it's a clown show. They come in, they gavel in, and they gavel out. And then the taxpayers get a bill for bringing the legislature back, paying the per diems, paying for the meals, and they do absolutely nothing. They don't want to pass this bill. First conversation we had with the Families for Safe Streets, I said, it's not any of this. Senators sending letters to other senators that really hope that we pass this bill. It's all a game. They didn't pass it since January. They don't want to pass it. They're not going to pass it. They believe it annoys motorists. By the way, I'm sure it annoys motorists because you can get a speeding ticket. Yes, you can. But it saves lives. That's the flip side of it.
Governor, do you expect any legal challenges from motorists who get these tickets who will claim that the state didn't have the authority to issue them a summons?
We have gone through this legally. We have the state reinstating the law. I'm confident of my emergency powers. I've exercised them before. You'll have the state DMV cooperating with the city and the city law. So we are very comfortable with our legal position. Again, I want to get a permanent law, and I want to get an extension, and I need the Senate. But we're also confident in this emergency construct, which is Marcia's question, is 30 days by 30 days. And as we sit here today, this is an impending emergency. The hurricane is going to hit the first day of school. The hurricane in this case is no cameras, additional speeders. By the way, there's also evidence that shows when the speed cameras go off, the speeding goes up.
Can you sort of elaborate, you're saying that you don't expect him to continue to issue the executive order because you want the state senate to come back and do its job, but it also seems like you think that's kind of a hopeless task. I mean, what makes you think they'll come back at this point if they weren't going to do it before school started?
There are other bills that expire later in the year. There are other bills that local governments need passed, and there are bills that are important to them, right? This bill was not important to them. That's why they didn't come and they didn't pass it. What bills do they pass? They pass bills that are important to them. This bill should have been important to them. I don't care if you don't have that many Republican representatives. By the way, you did have one right in the heart of this district, but it wasn't important to them. And they'll come when there's a bill that's important to them.
Last question, guys.
What makes you think that they're going to pass the bill when they come back? I mean, if it's not important to them and they didn't want to pass it since January, what makes you think that when they come back to do the bills that are important to them, that they'll do this bill too?
Well, Marcia, first, I hope at one point reasonableness and responsibility will set in. And then if they want to get a bill passed, they're going to need the Assembly to be cooperative. They're going to need me to be cooperative. And this is a priority for the Assembly, and it's a priority for me.
Governor, I'm still confused about one aspect of this. If you can extend the state law through your executive order, why do you need the city to pass a law? The city can pass a law that does the same thing. Why do you need to extend the state law?
Neither can do it without the Department of Motor Vehicles. City can pass a law. State can pass a law. You need to reestablish the Department of Motor Vehicles authority, which is reestablishing the law. When we reestablish the law, we empower Department of Motor Vehicles pursuant to the state law, and I then authorize it to cooperate with the city.
You can't authorize that cooperation without
Not if I don't have legal authority to do it. The legal authority comes from the emergency declaration.
So DMV has to be able to tell the city the license plate that you took a picture of belongs to such and such and such and such. Is that the reason?
Yes,
why you-
yes. You have the Department of Motor Vehicles actually processes the information. They say, here's the license plate, Marcia Kramer, here's her record, 7 speeding violations, reckless endangerment, 4 outstanding parking tickets, registration expired, previous record, suspended license, revoked license at one time, juvenile issues when she was, I'm just saying, I happened to read the record. You want, so DMV then tells New York City that, and they're the ones that actually process the information. So none of it works without Department of Motor Vehicles.
Thank you, guys.
We've heard over and over that the state has to do it. The city doesn't have the power on its own to find these drivers. It sounds like they do. They're just missing that cooperation.
Well, you're going to have differences of opinions on all of this. that's why I said this is a very legally aggressive posture, because you will have potentially people who question the city's ability to pass that law. They'll question my ability to declare this an emergency, to Shane's point, because this really isn't an emergency, which would mean they'd have to totally discount the value of human life. But, people can question anything. And this is an aggressive legal strategy. It's the best we can do, because we're not just going to sit here and let human life be endangered. The cleanest solution is the permanent law by the Senate.
Governor, what do you say to the community groups who are still asking you to return the $64,000 in campaign contributions from Donald Trump?
Why would I ever give Donald Trump money? Why would I do that? I am using the money to defeat Donald Trump. I'm not giving Donald Trump back his money. I am focused on defeating Donald Trump. I'm not going to help him. Look, my job as governor is to protect the people of the state of New York from public safety hazards when speed cameras go off, from hurricanes, from floods, from train accidents, from terrorists, and from federal governments that are hostile to the people of the state of New York. President Trump is hostile to the rights and the values and the economy of the state of New York. It's not even close. He has attacked me repeatedly. He attacked me again on Friday night when he said nobody wants to move to New York because the state sues everyone. That's damaging to the state of New York. He's demeaning the state. He's sending a signal to business they shouldn't come to New York. And by the way, it's not just another lie from the President of the United States. It has nothing to do with the state suing anyone. What he's annoyed about is the State Department of Taxation and Finance is investigating his foundation. That's not suing everyone. That's investigating him and his foundation. And we need a Democratic Senate, and we need a Democratic Congress to stop this madman who is in Washington. And my campaign money, I'm going to use to do just that, to fight Donald Trump, to elect a Democratic Congress. And why I would ever give back a campaign contribution he gave me 10 years ago, rather than spend that money to defeat him and his sexist, racist, bigoted policies, makes no sense to me.
Thank you, guys.
I have a DMV question, if you don't mind. There's a woman from Long Island who registered a new car, she got plates, and that very day got a ticket for saying improper plates. DMV gave her a letter saying your plates are improper, gave her new plates. But yet, she was hit with a judgment of $680 because she didn't pay the ticket that was not a legitimate ticket. Is there anything that you can do, anything that DMV can do to make this right? Because they admit that they gave her improper plates.
If your facts are correct, and not that you're a suspect given your past DMV record, then obviously DMV should help. But we'll take the specifics, Marcia, and we will follow up. Both laws have the same fines and violations. They are both compatible. So they impose the same fine for the same speed, etc.
And who's issuing the ticket? Like, what entity actually is ticketing?
DMV processes the ticket information. Right?
Yeah, so my understanding, Rosa, is that in the past, when the cameras were issuing violations, because of state cooperation, the Department of Motor Vehicles had a memorandum of understanding with the New York City Police Department, and they would give that data through the vendor that runs the cameras to the NYPD. The NYPD would then issue the civil summonses based on DMV's cooperation, providing that information to the City of New York. And then those fines would be adjudicated if people wanted to contest them at oath. So that's my understanding of how the process worked in the past, and it's my understanding is that is our expectation of how the process will move forward in the
We
future.
will re-implement that system.
Thanks, guys.
Your reaction also to apparently the American flag at the White House this morning was lowered. It was at half-staff for John McCain, but it went back up to full staff this morning. Apparently, the president wanted it at full staff instead of half-staff. Your reaction to that, and the fact that over the weekend he really didn't have much to say about John McCain. He just did condolences to the family.
At this point, we should be surprised by pettiness and nastiness and shameful behavior. I don't think so. He is predictable in his narcissism, his anger, and his disdain, and jealousy. He's jealous. He should be jealous. Senator McCain is twice the public elected official this president will ever be. Okay, no more questions for Marcia Kramer Scofflaw. By governing. Pay your tickets. Pay your tickets.